G'day world and welcome to the Jeff Willis Show. Today I have with me Hussein Hallak. Now Hussein Hallak is dialing in from Vancouver. I always like to know where people are, and I'm still love the fact that we can do this high definition video for free from all around the world and have conversations, fireside chats, and talk about what's inspired them, the journeys along the way, what have they learnt, and Assain is going to share with us a very interesting story. Assain is a seasoned entrepreneur originally from Syria, but has meandered his way via Syria through to Dubai, through to Canada today. He's a founder and CEO of Decentrum, a leading provider in business education in emerging technology. I'm going to find out more about that. It's interesting, in fact, fascinating. And the company behind Momentable. And that has something to do with pharaohs and all that sort of stuff as well, because he comes out of the Middle East. So we're going to hear about that, which is a discovery platform for art and culture. Assain has developed over 20 startups, honing an extensive range of expertise and experience. In his previous role as evangelist and general manager at Launch Academy, he mentored and trained hundreds of entrepreneurs, helping it become one of North America's premier tech incubators with 6,500 founders and 500 startups, raising more than $1 billion. As an accomplished professional, Assain has launched successful ventures like CreativeArab, the world's first and largest marketplace for Middle Eastern art and the content people, an award-winning content marketing agency with prominent clients such as Virgin Mobile, Pfizer, and Starbucks. Now, I could go on, but I'm going to pause there because we want to hear his story. And Assain, great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here. And thanks for that massive introduction. I appreciate it. There's a lot that I've done and I'm proud of it, but it does get too long. I remember somebody sending on LinkedIn a complaint saying, it's too long, it doesn't stop.
So Assain, tell us a little bit about where this all started. And I believe that one of your first crushes was on art. Okay, you loved art, did art, and also it's led to what you're doing today. So just tell us a little bit about growing up in Syria and how you got to leave and why. So tell us a bit about Assain, the young Assain in Syria.
Absolutely. So I was always kind of, I wouldn't say hunted, but kind of the shadow behind me was my uncle who has the same name. He was a revolutionary. He got shot in his shoulder for protesting the French occupation of Syria when he was 9th grade. And he participated in every single revolution in the Middle East, every single revolution that freed the Middle Eastern country or Arab country from like the French or the Italians or the English. He was there. So that is, and I was named after him. So everywhere I go when I was young, everybody's like, you're him, you have to carry his legacy. And he was such a massive figure. He built the first publishing house and kind of one of the biggest publishing houses in Lebanon, and published for some of the most well-known poets as I grew up. So the people that I read for, he published, and he had like guests in his home. So that is how I grew up, kind of to give you an idea. And that was wherever I went, oh, you're so-and-so, he's your uncle. You're so-and-so, he's your uncle. So that is how I grew up. So I had that big thing that I'm meant for something big, but that also creates that there's that expectation from you. So while I wanted to be an artist, I wanted to actually, I went, you can see probably the guitar behind me or the stuff that I loved playing. I was into music, but I had to be an engineer. I had to build something, have to kind of become someone of the society rather than just an artist, because art is not seen as something, you're going to starve. So that kind of shaped my personality as I was young. And when I got the opportunity to go to engineering school or art school, I went to engineering school. But it took only till second year to use my artistic talent to pay for me going to school. So I started as a graphic designer and put myself through university. And by the time I graduated, I had my first marketing agency. And that was history. I never worked as an engineer. I worked like for a couple of years.
Right.
But then that's what I did. And I built my first tech company, which was an online gaming company. We built websites that looked like games. And the first company that I worked with was the Disney of the Middle East. Its name is Spacetoon. They loved our work. And in 3 months, they acqui-hired my company. and gave me a role in Dubai, and that was the end of my journey in Syria. But to give you an idea, let's say, of my fascination with art, we grew up with a painting in our living room by a surrealist artist from Iraq called Dia Azawi. And that painting is very strange, surreal. Like there's a woman with one eye. And every time we had guests, and we had guests all the time, that painting will come up. So in my mind, art, the definition of art is a conversation. The artist was never there, never talked, never said anything about the painting. The painting didn't speak, didn't have anything underneath it. And it was the heart. Any conversation will bring up that painting. So that stayed with me. And I realized the power that art can have into inspiring people, crossing barriers, even though it was something that people didn't necessarily understand. You know, people love landscapes and stuff. It maintained that conversation. So that's what stayed with me, kind of to give you an idea of what I grew up with.
Well, that's very interesting. I love that the art didn't say anything, but it said a lot.
Indeed.
And that's the paradox of art sometimes, isn't it? Well, it is the paradox of art, that it's story behind it, the motivation behind it, and then the creativity to deliver it and produce it. And that reminds me of the power of not only having an idea, but then creating it and producing something from that, because that's the only way you actually make a difference in the world, is to produce and then share it. So, but yeah, that piece of art, just saying nothing but saying everything in your home, that's really insightful. So you moved on to Dubai and you're working for this company, Middle Eastern company, that is what surreal art is. That it was basically the Disney of the Middle East, right? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
That's fascinating. So are they still the Disney of the Middle East, or?
Yeah, they are. They basically, I think they own most of the rights for animated movies, for Japanese animated movies in many places in the Middle East. So they are the largest, the biggest there. And they produce their own shows. But what ended up happening is the person who architected the deal was the vice president, and he left a few months after I joined. So it was very new what we were doing for the rest of the company. Nobody knew what to do with me. So I was like free to join several teams. And that was my first interaction with the idea of a startup. I would join a team, start up a company, help them start it, and then move to something else. So I helped internally start 10 companies, because people ask me, how did you start 20 companies? That's a lot of companies to start. I said, well, 10 of them or 11 of them were not mine. It was mostly joining a team, help them start. And that was fascinating. I was like, I love this. I want to do more of that. So the thought of starting with an idea and developing to something that can be a success is so fascinating. It kind of consumed me. And when you're creative, you can express yourself. Like the joy that of expression and creation can be, you can take it from creating something, you know, like a sculpture. You can take it, or take the same feeling from trying to play the guitar, drawing, or even building something. The joy is similar. And that's surprised me, because of all I ever wanted throughout my life is to become an artist and to be accepted as a creative. So I looked, one of the biggest things that were with me at that time is that because I didn't study creativity, and everywhere I went is like people say, well, you didn't work for an agency, you didn't study in the art school, so you're never going to become a creative director or an art director. Because I had this card that says I'm a creative director, my own card from my own company. And my friends who were in agencies, they say, well, somebody has to give you this title. You can't give yourself that title. And for the longest time, I had this imposter syndrome. It's like, yeah, to the other world, I show up as confident, but internally it's like, yeah, I never earned this title. Nobody kind of gave it to me. And it stayed with me until 2009, when I completely dropped that and said, you know what? I am who I say I am. I don't give a shit what the world says. But it stayed with me all that time. And I shouldn't have had that, but that's how the world interact with us. You know, people want to ask you what made you so, and what gives you the right to name yourself something, or, you know. And I remember, what is it? Mark Zuckerberg, that iconic moment in the show The Social Network, where he printed a card that says, "I'm CEO, bitch." Like that. Can I say that on this?
Yeah,
This
yeah,
podcast?
absolutely.
So like he printed that, and like, and that was a unique moment where, I mean, regardless of who Mark Zuckerberg is and my opinions of him, but that moment where you are who you say you are, and why do you want to wait the world to tell you? So that was kind of my relationship, the on and off relationship of me accepting myself as a creative and as an artist that is not necessarily in art, but in everything that I touch, I have to bring my own touch. I have to bring my own creativity. And that is my artistry. That is my creative being.
Mm.
And it took a long time to accept that.
Right. Yeah, I think what I love about your journey is that you have stepped into unknown paths. In other words, you've actually created your own path. You haven't stepped into the common paths that society gave you. You sort of did start that. An observation is that you went and did an engineering degree, didn't you?
Yeah.
And that lasted all of what you worked as an engineer for 2 years.
5 years. 5 years engineering degrees, and actually 6 years. I stayed on 1 year.
Right.
And it's 5 years, and I stayed on 1 year, and I did 2 years of engineering. And the out of all places, it's Syrian television, which is essential stuff. And funny thing had happened all my life. When I was young, I look at the mountain. So if anybody remembers, TVs used to have towers where they broadcast, not satellite. So there was this broadcasting tower on the highest mountain in Damascus, and I've always wondered what is there. And my job at the end of the day was to actually be an engineer in that place. So I ended up having the best view of Damascus. It was it's a military area. You have to like go in, you have to have permission because you're control of broadcast. You can literally shut down the broadcast on the president when they're saying a massive, let's say, or doing a speech or something. So there's the secret police is always there and stuff like that. So it's a fascinating kind of journey, but ended up being where I thought, like, I always wondered what is there, ended up working there. So something I learned in my life is that what you put in your mind, and I don't mean like vision board or something like that, but stuff that you care about have a way of showing up in your life. If something is really an obsession, it shows up in many different ways. It's just, do you pay attention to it? So that kind of governs all my life. So I kind of learned that whatever I put in my mind, I can pursue. Everything that I did, almost everything that I did, was done in my life for the first time. I had zero experience in it. I would walk into a meeting and say, "Hey, Jeff, what do you really want to do?" "Oh, we want to do that. Do you think I can do it?" "Yeah, we can do it." And I'll disappear for a couple of days, come back and say, "Yeah, here's," that's how I did. That's how I got into advertising, writing all the time. I would land the client first and go figure out how to execute the second.
Well, yeah, that's bravery and courage. And so did you enjoy not knowing, but you enjoyed the learning as well? Is that part of it?
I'm like lifelong learner. I love learning new stuff, and there is no joy once I mastered something to the point that there is no challenge. I get bored really easily. It's like, there's no challenge. I can do this. So what is news? I'm not learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I started Momentable and we entered into the market, I was working for a tech company and helped them 5 times their revenue, and they oversubscribed for their investment. And right at that point, I said to the CEO, I was like, "Okay, it's time for me to leave." And he couldn't believe it. It's like, "Who offered you more money?" I said, "I have no offer, but I'm done. My work is done here. You don't need me anymore. I can't contribute. You reached a point where now you just need to build on this. And this is not a place where I can add value. So I need to leave." And he couldn't believe it. And my wife couldn't believe it as well. I was like, "Why you're doing this?"
Okay.
You're saying that you can make money easily and like you're leaving. It's like, yeah, because if I can't contribute, I feel like a part of me is dying with every day. I'm doing something that I've done yesterday, and there's nothing new. And you're right. You understand. Even though you mastered the skill of writing about something new there's discovery. There's there's learning. I would imagine that's how it is. That's how you can continue something for so long. Same thing with painting. Something with playing music. If there is no discovery and you're not kind of exploring new grounds, it get boring really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I do love about writing, for example, is taking an idea and also then learning. So I think the question, and I'm about to write an article on it, and I've written about it before, is why do I write? And also I'm curious about why other people write.
Mm.
And one of the main drivers for me is, number one, is to make sense of the world, because you've got to take all this complexity, this cloud of information and with an idea and try and distill it. Julia Cameron, the artist way, says is to metabolize it. So what we're trying to do is, I think all of us are trying to make sense of the world. But for me, my tool to do that is writing.
Mm.
Then the real test is, have I made enough sense of the world that other people get it? And that's where sharing it with the world becomes really important. In other words, publishing, create, publish. And then the next step for me is the 3 steps is actually quite simple, and then share it with the world. And for me, social media gave me the distribution and means to share it with the world without the old media gatekeepers where I had to pay. So for me, that's why I write, to learn, to make sense of the world, and also the joy of wrangling something into something that makes sense. That's what I really love about writing. And then let's have some fun with it along the way, right? So
100%.
yeah. So I'm just basically talking to myself at the moment, but it's okay. Being a little selfish, talk about me. Should we talk about you? Came out of an idea. I wrote, are social media influencers to blame for the $2 million handbag? So that led me down a rabbit hole of who makes these handbags, and it's the richest man in the world. So there you go. But
I saw that was an interesting article, by the way.
So it was just fun. So it came out of watching entitled young people in my neighborhood who think that a $3,000 handbag is normal. I'm going, no, it's not normal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress, and let's get back to you, Assain, because that's why we're here. So you're in Dubai, and where do you go next? What's the next call on the adventure?
Yeah. Dubai was fascinating. I had great time there. Great city. There are a lot of challenges, obviously, there. First of all, the heat and the lack of fresh air. So that was probably one of the things that we couldn't deal with. The other thing is that it's a city that is meant for you to spend time in the city. It consumes you. There's always things to discover. There's like, if you go to any mall, there are like at least 12 to 24 screens. So you can always be at the movies. It's open from 10 a.m. till 2 a.m. So it's buzzing. And I had a great time. However, the challenge for us being Syrian, and with the Syrian civil war starting at around 2011, it became harder for us. So we were always wanting, me and my wife, we were always wanting to go to Canada or the US. Her family's all in the US, and we wanted our kids to grow up in a place where they're free to be who they are. Syria, I love Syria, but you're not free to be who you are. Dubai, kind of like the same. You're free to be who you are as long as you don't interfere in certain things, and as long as you have enough money, because Dubai consumes you when it comes to money. You need to be really, really well off to live in Dubai well. So we moved to Vancouver, and I had to start all over again. I didn't imagine so, because I came in and I had like a history. I've built up this brand and this persona, and here I am, very well known in Dubai, and I have a successful business. In fact, our company had just won an award alongside Adobe and the University of British Columbia as a communication award for our work on social media. And then I move here, and because this is something that people may relate to, you can move and take your expertise with you and execute them, but the brand doesn't travel with you, because your brand, your community owns it. So nobody knew who the hell I am. And I had, to give you an idea, I had 2,000 people on my LinkedIn, all of them in the Middle East. I had no one in Canada. Right. I had probably one person in Canada that I know. So I had to start from zero, and I couldn't find a job for 6 months. And I'm a great networker, but none of the networking abilities that I had worked in Vancouver. It's a completely different community city approach. So I was like, okay, scrap all this, start from the ground. So I went and reached out to 6,000 people on LinkedIn. I added 6,000 people within 3 months, and I added everyone who had the title entrepreneur or CEO or something that relates to my like marketing and whenever they say, well, what do you want? I said, well, I'm new to Vancouver and I would love to have a coffee. And I asked for nothing. I just had coffee and I wanted to meet people because my principle, which I developed over the years, is that the more people you know, the more opportunities, the more the world gives you. The world, you interact with the world with the people you know, not through titles, not through money. It's people. The more people, the better relationships, the more you can survive the world. So I said, let me meet people. And I met everyone I could in Vancouver. And within 3 months, I got 5 job offers. And I was one of the most well-known people in Vancouver. Everybody knew who I am. And I had venture capitalists, one of the top venture capitalists in Vancouver. We're talking about selling companies for hundreds of millions of dollars, recommending me to people and having lunch with them. And all I did is reach out to people and was genuine, no agenda. Didn't want them to give me a job, even though my money was running out really quickly. I just wanted to know them and I wanted them to help me learn Vancouver. I said, who should I meet? Where should I network? And what should I read? Because I realized that I need to adopt a new mind. I cannot come with the Dubai mind. Now, when I moved to Damascus to Dubai, it was still young and I still didn't have like an idea of the world. But by the time I moved to Vancouver, I have a really solid idea of who I am and what I want to be. But I had to let go of that and say, I need to become somebody who Vancouver will accept. I need to become the Vancouverite because I'm going to live here. I cannot come here with the mindset of Dubai and hang on to it. So that saved my life. And I got to know Launch Academy as you introduced me, and I joined first as a mentor. As someone who wanted to build a startup. I walked in and I loved the place. I said, "What do I need to join here?" They said, "Well, you need to have a startup and you pay the membership fee." Next day, it's like, "I have a startup." They didn't know I completely invented the startup within a day because I wanted to be there at any cost. And they saw that I'm good at marketing and say, "Hey, would you mentor some people?" I said, "Absolutely." And I became a mentor there, then head mentor. Then they asked me to be the GM. They said, "You're contributing. You're technically living here because you're coming all the time and you're helping people. We'd want you to be GM." And I was GM. I said yes to everything throughout the first 6 years in Vancouver. Everybody who asked, would you show up here? Would you teach? Would you come up to this school? And I didn't have a car. I had to travel, sometimes by bus for 2 hours to go to a place to talk for 15 minutes. And I would say yes. I said yes to everything. And everybody in Vancouver know me. They thought I was the founder of Launch Academy. Sorry, Ray. But because every time I show up and I have the Launch Academy t-shirt, which I loved, that's all I wore. I stole it all from the Launch Academy, and everywhere I show up, I carry the brand, and I speak and I help people, and people love that to the point that anybody who lands to a certain extent, almost anybody who's new to Vancouver or to Canada who lands, and ask them, who should I meet to kind of help me? Say, we'll talk to Hussein. Right. And I am so proud, and it's like one of my proudest moments of people pointing at me in a new city that I wasn't part of a few years ago, point and say, Hussein can help you. That was one of my proudest moments, and I feel like I contributed to a community where I want my kids to grow up.
Yeah, well, I think relationships are the most important thing in the world. It's actually the foundation of happiness. So, and relationships happen in life everywhere, business as well as family, as well as friends. And
true.
And it does. It brings me immense joy to sit down. And I do like quality relationships over quality relationships over quantity relationships. I think they're much better. I prefer a one-on-one. Just otherwise, if you just got a lot of people in a room and you don't get to talk to them, go, well, I would have liked to talk to all of them, but I'm just going to chat to 2 or 3 or maybe just one, because I'd rather have a deep conversation rather than a shallow one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was lucky at Launch Academy because those entrepreneurs who came there, people who came there, usually they're talking to you about the thing that mattered most to them. They're obsessed with this idea. They want to see it successful. So I got to meet people at probably the best kind of setting, which is they want to accomplish something, and I'm there that can help them and guide them and connect them with people. So that was probably one of the best things that I've ever had. And you have people who connect with you at a different level at that stage. And yeah, you're right. I think if I wasn't at Launch Academy, probably it would have been harder for me. But there, we are literally the community center. So every day there are like at least 50, 60 people coming in and asking questions and talking to them, aside from the members that we have to help. So your job is to meet as many people as possible and to work with them and help them and guide them to people. So that platform, I think, was extremely unique that way until COVID came around and kind of killed in person, which for me, I realized how much I needed that and how much energy comes from meeting a person in person and like shaking their hands and talking to them. The presence is irreplaceable.
Yeah, exactly. That's where the chemistry really happens, I think, is when you sit down and break bread or share a glass of wine, or I think it's very, very important. So, Launch Academy, what motivated you to leave, or what event created you to go and start on your next adventure?
Yeah, I thought I'm going to be at Launch Academy forever because I loved it. It was honestly the best place in the world. You are at the heart of the entrepreneurial community in Vancouver, because Vancouver is a very entrepreneurial city. You stumble entrepreneurs everywhere you go. Mm-hmm. So it was a very entrepreneurial city, and Vancouver Launch Academy was at the heart of it. So I thought I'm going to be staying there forever. I never thought I would be in a job because I was always an entrepreneur. But I said, if there's a job that I would stay in forever, is this one, because I'm doing everything I love. And you get to also, for someone like me who loves to work on a ton of stuff, you're working on 100, at any given moment, you're advising 100 entrepreneurs. So you're working on 100 ideas. It's like, what is it? Cocaine for me. It's very addictive. So yes. I don't know what cocaine does, but I feel like people say it's very addictive. So it's like cocaine for people who are addicted. So it was fascinating. But then I attended a workshop about blockchain. Now, we had companies that worked in Bitcoin blockchain, so I knew about it. But most of the time when you hear people talking about it, everybody's talking about the price of Bitcoin up, down. And I didn't pay attention to that because I dabbled in the stock market. And I knew that wasn't for me because I sucked at it. So it's like, okay, anything has to do with pricing, buying assets and stuff like that, not me. But then when I attended the workshop, I was like, this is fascinating. I love the technology. It seemed so interesting. And then I started researching and reading. And the more I read, the dumber I felt.
What year was this?
That was 2016, 2017.
Okay.
So it was the first time ever. Now I'm pretty smart and I'm an engineer and I can manage I used to give you an idea, in 1998, I used to, as a hobby, read the technical details of the technical specification of a Intel processor as pastime. So this is how geeky I am. So when I say that I'm reading technology, articles about blockchain and Bitcoin and I'm feeling dumber the more I read, like that was not a feeling that I've had before. So I was like, there's something here. So I started reading more, and it took me 6 months to understand how Bitcoin operates. And the moment I understood, it was like, wow, this is incredible. It's the most elegant technology solution that I've ever seen in my life. It's incredible technology from a technology point. I'm not promoting Bitcoin or anything, but just as a tech, and you hear the people who are true technology interested in it, they will talk about it like that. So it's like, this is it. I wanna teach people about this, because I saw the gap between how hard is it to understand it and how much the technology is needed. So I ran a workshop, and the first workshop was a complete shit show, because I half understood what I understood. But I learned a long time ago that the best way to learn is to teach, because if you put yourself on the line, you have to learn. So I said, you know what? I'm going to run a workshop. Halfway through the workshop, there was a cryptographer and someone who's from the Ethereum Foundation, which is like the number 2 blockchain in the world behind Bitcoin. And halfway through the workshop, they took over. They're answering people's questions because I didn't know what to answer. And I learned so much at that workshop. It's like, this is wonderful. I'm going to do another one. So I did, every month I did 1 or 2 completely free for the community. By the time I did 6, I was one of the most the best people that can teach this thing. People were flocking from everywhere, and I had people reaching out to teach, like to do workshops. And we ended up starting next Decentrum, and we raised $450,000 in funding. And we built courses that were accepted in universities and Informa, which is the number one corporate education company in the world, within like less than a year. So I was fascinated, I was hooked, and I wanted more of these emerging technologies. By 2021, NFTs came around. And when NFTs came around, it was an elegant solution for a problem, which is how do you sell digital files or anything digital? How do you sell it, and how do you transfer ownership? There's nothing online that can do that. You have, aside from a central authority, like somebody keeping that track record. So I saw NFTs, and I saw this is what artists have always needed. And since I worked with artists all my life, started CreativeArab, the largest marketplace for Middle Eastern art, I know artists and I know their problems. And I saw this as a solution, but I hated how the market did it. I hated the apes. I hated the penguins. Sorry, guys, but like they're horrible. Like, and the idea that this is called NFT art, like AI art, I think that's a misnomer. It's like if I took a photograph and said this is camera art, it's the same thing. There's art and there's other things. It's either art or not. It doesn't matter what the nature of it. So there's no such thing as called NFT art. There's no such thing, in my opinion, AI art. And I was like, that's not art. And I know why artists hated it. So we worked with artists and museums, and we focused on that. And that helped us survive the crash that happened. We built a collection called CryptoPharaohs, which is focused on story building and on beautiful designs inspired by the Egyptian culture, which I love so much and I grew up around. And that led us to here, where what we're doing right now, we're building the largest repository of visual arts in the world that people can enjoy in the best experience possible. That is what Momentable has. And if I haven't done all of these things, I wouldn't be here.
So does Momentable focus just on Egyptian art? Is that its focus? Is that, or is it
not at all? No, it's all art and culture, because people connect. My son grew up in Vancouver and Dubai, but he's fascinated with Japanese culture. I'm fascinated with Egyptian culture. People, and when I grew up in Damascus, I was fascinated with American culture. I love jazz, I love blues, I love New York. Even though I haven't visited, I got to visit it last year, which was a surreal experience. And I saw my first Picasso in MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. But throughout my life, I've been fascinated with America, and especially New York in particular as a city. So people fascinated. Culture brings us together. Art brings us together, regardless of where we come from. So that is why we are all about all cultures. Egyptian culture, I'm fascinated with it. So there will be a special place for that, because Egypt has a culture as well. I think I don't know how accurate it is, but it is said that 2/3 of the world's artifacts are from Egypt. 2/3. There's so much culture to come. I mean, it's a 5,000 year civilization. There's so much coming out of there. So definitely Egyptian culture will have a special place, but Momentable is for all art and culture. And the idea is we're bringing the classical works and the Renaissance works and making them available. They are available for free for people, but they are in repositories and databases. So bringing them out and making a viewing experience that is incredible. And then when we bring on the contemporary artist, you can at least see the continuous connection between a millennia of art and culture that we produced as human beings, which is sitting in storage most of the time, and the contemporary artists. And people can be educated visually, not necessarily go into education, but you can see the parallels and you can immerse yourself in the world of art. That's what Momentable is all about.
Right. So to pursue this a bit further on Momentable, how does Momentable business model work? Because it's essentially a startup.
Yes.
Yeah. So and Decentrum basically was about training people on crypto and blockchain. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. And then out of that came Momentables, which is, so what's the monetization model for Momentables? How does it work for you?
So we operate on a subscription and sales commission business model. So we have a free subscription available for everyone, but then there's a premium subscription. So artists can sign up for a premium subscription and build their own channels within Momentable, and charge subscription from others as well for their channels. If you can imagine Apple TV, you have like Paramount, AMC, and stuff channels, sub channels within the Apple experience, the Apple TV experience. Similar fashion, you have the Momentable experience, curated experience, but then there are channels that artists can buy into, and then they can. The biggest challenge that artists face is that they can only make money once they sell their work. So they sell a painting, they survive, they don't sell, they starve. So we're saying, well, most artists keep meticulous record of all of the other paintings that they've sold. It's sitting on their desktop, they're not doing anything. We'll say, why don't you display it? Display it in a way that people will enjoy it. You can play it on a TV just like a stream, like a video, but it's not a video. You just stream the artwork. And then you can charge subscription. People can pay $1, $2, and they can support you, they can tip you, they can donate, they can, if you have a project that's coming up, you can ask people, just like Patreon. And what that does is that artists now have other sources of income in addition to their painting. We also allow artists to sell their paintings. And if you are a free subscription artist, we take a 15% commission. If you are paying artists, we take less commission, 10 and 5%. Mm-hmm. So that is how we make money from the artist. If there is for the user, it's also freemium, so you can sign up for free. But if you want, let's say, some of the premium features, you pay also a subscription, $24 per month. So that is how we monetize. In addition to that, some of the artists that we work with, because we have the Momentable is more of a product, a SaaS product, but Decentrum is more of a company that has managed services. So some of the artists that we see that do well, we take them on and we start promoting them, doing festivals for them, doing exhibitions, selling the actual paintings. So we have a multi kind of tier, diverse business model, which I think is necessary to survive in today's world.
Mm. So the art you're helping the artists sell and also featuring, are they just digital art, or is it physical art that can be bought as well? Is it both physical as well as digital?
We're starting with digital just because logistically it's far better. Sending a painting is really, really hard work because it's not just any shipping. It needs to, depending on the painting and depending, like, can you unwrap it, all of that. So digital art is easier to sell. And a lot of people don't have space. A lot of things that they don't understand. Right now, the art market is around a $70 billion market. And that's only from selling the top-notch paintings. Very few people have $5,000 sitting laying around, have $1,000 laying around that they're willing to spend on art. But if you say, hey, $50, $20, or $10, people will buy. And also, almost everybody right now has a TV in their home, and sitting in probably the most prominent place. So they can play art on their TV, on their screens. So that is what we want to use, what people have. It's like the difference between, if you think about it, when we did have, all of these vinyls and we had cassette tapes. I have some like sitting here in the corner, like, and DVDs, and we had to have space and we had all these equipment, and now the mobile has everything. So nobody listens on, sophisticated equipment. There's no place for it. They pay money. It's all on the phone, and the headphones we're willing to sacrifice a little bit of the quality that we lose. There's nothing like standing in front of a real painting. Nothing can take that away. We're not here to replace that. But the fact is, 90% of people in the world have never set foot in a gallery or museum. Wow. And even if they do, 97% of all art and culture that we produce as human beings is sitting in storage. I went to MoMA. It cost me, in addition to traveling to Vancouver, being in Vancouver, and then traveling to New York and staying there, several thousands of dollars. And I got to see 5 Picasso paintings. That's it. Now, it was surreal for me, and I was very happy. But MoMA themselves have, I think, in the hundreds of Picasso paintings. Like they have so much Picassos that they're sitting in storage. So there's just no space for it. So we think this is a solution to open up and give access to people to art and culture around the world.
Right. That's fascinating. So the big problems you're solving, on hearing what you're saying, and also it's true that so much art is invisible, not seen, stored. So you're giving visibility to artists, and also you're helping them monetize their works and scaling it. Is that correct? Are they the two big
Absolutely.
problems you're solving?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, because as we talked about before, that, and you didn't pursue the artist career because most artists are really starving artists, and they almost need to do art as their side hustle because it's what they love doing.
Yeah.
So I think if you stumble into a place where your art becomes your business, I think that is just such a great place to play, because you can pursue whatever you like. So it's like, okay, how can I? And that's why artists, well, actors, they work at cafes, they work in restaurants as waiters and waitresses, just so they can actually pursue their passion to be an actor or an actress. So I think it's fascinating. So, so really, what you've done, your journey has gone from putting art aside in terms of being your core thing you do each day, but still playing the guitar, still painting, which I believe you still do today, to now actually using the digital world and platforms to actually to pay for your life, but along the way you're living vicariously through other artists as well, I'm sure.
100%. It's a similar thing that I did with entrepreneurs, is that the desire to help them succeed. I discovered, I mean, it may be for me, not for others, but I discovered I get similar fulfillment from being part of somebody else's success as much as being successful. In fact, actually, it's a little bit more, if not a lot more. And I don't want to sound like it's altruistic. It's totally like very personal for me. Like it's like it's a desire that I want for myself. That feeling is undescribable when somebody succeeds, and even if they don't thank you, to feel that you're part of somebody's journey is incredible. And I think that is what gives me fulfillment, and that is my way. Is like, if I can figure out this thing, and I don't say that I have yet, but if I can, with my team, figure out how to help artists become artists and still make money. And because my son is also an artist right now, he was accepted in physics and he's super smart. He wants to pursue art, and he's fascinated with the Japanese art. So for me also, it kind of added more pressure, and that's what something that he only kind of got into a year ago. Even like, I want him to succeed in his life, and I don't want him to have the same pressure that art is something that he does for hobby, and he has to work, somewhere to. Why not combine them both? And right now there are tools. You, as an artist, you can, let's say, start a YouTube channel and start drawing, but the problem there is that you have to do extra effort in addition to let's say doing your art in order to make money. What we're trying to do is to replace that need. It's like, you do your art and keep the channels that you want, and add these to you so that you can reach more people, you can inspire more people, and you can connect and build your own community across the world. And if anything, there's a lot of things that went wrong with the NFT rise, but one thing that showed us is that artists can build a community across continents.
Yes.
And they can make a living. All you need is some tools and a way to do that. And some artists, still till date, some of them who are true to their artistry and true to their community, and didn't treat NFTs as a get-rich scheme, they are still launching projects, they're still making money, and they're still building with their community.
Yeah, I think what you just described about being able to reach international markets and reach people globally, I think that's what really excited me initially when I discovered social media, 2008. The fact is that I could reach the world with my creation, and let's see where that goes and have some fun in the journey. And so that can be done with art, it can be done with words, it can be done with video. Now, this raises the big question, which is the biggest trend happening in the world, and basically happened 12 months ago, as in it was given a platform and a face and a user interface, which is ChatGPT and AI.
Mm.
Now, you must have some interesting insights and thoughts about the role of AI and art.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think there's both opportunities in it and also challenges in it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of those angles.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's a great way. What you said is that it's given a face, because I love how you positioned it, because it is, AI has existed for a while, but this is the
Yes.
first time that we have something that we can interact with, the rest of us, let's say, not AI experts or researchers. So true. And even with OpenAI doing their Open Dev Day on Monday, and I did a deep dive yesterday on AI and exploring like so I'm happy to talk about it. We even actually had Da Vinci, because the new version of Momentable, we call it Momentable Da Vinci. So we had ChatGPT trained as Da Vinci, and we interviewed it or him on our podcast. So it was a lot of fun. It's fascinating, to say the least. It's mind blowing at certain times. I think there's a lot of value that comes to it, and of course, a lot of challenges. What's happening right now is, number one, the world has changed drastically, not just with the introduction of AI, but also Monday. And if you look at, let's say, what Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, and with their Dev Day they just released, they indicated where the direction is going. The internet is not going to be the internet that we know. People are not going to want better websites. People want better experiences. So what we're seeing with ChatGPT is the rise of something called the conversational internet, which is an internet where you talk to the internet and it talks back to you. So you don't have to search Google and say, put a search, look at different articles, click on them, try to find your way. You just ask the question, you get the answer, and you can continue to ask and you can get the answer, and far, far more superior than, let's say, what Siri is able to do. So why does that change? Well, first of all, your website is irrelevant anymore unless it's conversational. People can, like, you're talking to people. And in addition to that, the next search engine is ChatGPT. It's not Google. SEO is out of the window. It's really about, I don't know if there's AI optimization, AIO, if you wish. So how are you optimized for the conversational internet? Do you have value to add? Because before it was like, can I create articles at a certain length? Can I post on social media? Right now, ChatGPT will evaluate if you have the answer, and it will give the answer to the person. And that changes everything for how people should react with the internet. And AI for art is a new tool that some artists are experimenting with it. What's his name? Rafiq Anadol, who his AI art was acquired by MoMA, who's been working in AI art or in AI, using AI in art, because I hate the term AI art, because there's art. He was doing art using AI as a tool for several years. Highly recommend checking him out on LinkedIn. So his artwork was exhibited in MoMA, and I got to see it this year actually when I went. Brilliant piece of work, and was acquired by MoMA, and it was just exhibited in the Sphere in Las Vegas. That big sphere that everybody's talking about. It's remarkable. So definitely a new tool and a new canvas that some artists will work with, and definitely something that changes the creative industry forever. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I recently wrote an article and I discovered that there's fashion design tools. In other words, to put an idea in and the AI helps you create a sneaker, helps you create a jacket.
Yeah.
And it's just fabulous. And my partner is a fashionista. She loves her fashion. Like, it is her expression. It's her art.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite see, wearing clothes and dressing up as actually art, but it is.
Yeah.
And I think plugging in, even into furniture, like, design me a sofa that is inspired by a Porsche, right? So or design me a shoe that is inspired by ABC. And I think the better the prompts we ask, the better the output of AI. And it's getting really scary good. I worked on an article, are social media influencers to blame for the $2 million handbag? And it was just a fun headline inspired by an event that happened a day or two before. And I plugged that topic in and said, write me 1,000 words on this, and write it in a humorous tone. In other words, it was a good headline, I believe, fun. It was a bit creative and different, and using the tone. And what I got back, I went, shit, this is seriously good post. I said, should I use the one I spent a day putting together for fun? Because that's how I wrote it for fun, right? And it's a slightly humorous piss take on, basically who's to blame. Well, I in the end, I blamed it on the rich because they can, right?
Yeah.
So, but AI is just like, I think for me, we're seeing as AI taking away human creativity. I think it's actually exploding and amplifying it. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. See, as a writer, you're not going to stop writing because you're writing not just for the money. You're writing because it gives you something, and that's why you will always do it, regardless of whether AI took over writing or not. You're going to still do it, just like till date, some people build stuff with their hands that they can obviously buy, like some people, do, sculptures and stuff. You can easily buy, let's say, a vase from the store, but that's not what it is. It's what the making, the expression. And what happened is, if I take just my life, let's not talk, 500 years ago, 30 years ago, I had to go and learn. I did logos by hand because I didn't have a computer. So I did logos by hand, and I did the printing plates. I did the drawing, let's say, for the red, the blue, whatever it is. I did them on separate transparent sheets, and that's what we gave to the printer. Fast forward 5 years, I did the design on Photoshop and just hit export, and it exports the printing file. So I removed because what's important is the creation, not the actual process of that. Especially, I didn't like doing the printing plates, but I had to do them because that's the only way you produce. Fast forward, let's say 10 other years, you have templates. You can just actually take the template, move it around so that you can faster express your ideas. Fast forward another 10 years, we're in AI, where you can say to the AI what you want, and it gives you expressions, and you can now say, no, I want this, I want that. The gap between our thinking, our ideas, and the execution is closing. That is what these tools are doing. The tools are making the gap between our vision and what we want to see and what we actually see is closing. These are what these tools are doing. Yeah. But just like when cameras came around, just like now everybody has an iPhone, everyone has some of the most sophisticated cameras. Billions of people have some of the most sophisticated cameras in their pockets, but that doesn't result in billions of photos that look great. In fact, most photos look shitty, yes. Most photos. I have a camera and I think of myself as artistic, but for the life of me, I can't take a great photo. My wife, whatever photo she takes, it's always great. So even though you might have the most sophisticated tools, that doesn't mean that you're going to produce something artistic or compelling. That still requires effort. The type of effort, and where the effort is spent is different. Because the people's expectations are different right now. If you have AI art, they expect your art to say something that matters, that connects, more so than something that so if you're saying, look at the skill that I did this, well, a tool, I can do it in 5 minutes or 2 minutes. What else do you? So I come to Seth Godin said something great. He had a blog post that actually is written by ChatGPT and about AI. He said, mediocrity is dead. That is his interpretation. With AI, you're no longer accepted to be mediocre, because in the past you could envision something, but your capability stopped you from doing that. There's a lot of people that can think great ideas, but when they come to write, it's shitty writing. They don't have the skill, and it takes a lot from them to do that.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for me to write. My friend that I co-host with, he's a writer. He can write an article, spit out an article that looks great in an hour. It takes me 3 hours to write an article of equal good. So these tools close the gap. So now you're asked, you don't have a barrier to express. So what is it that you're going to do? You have no excuse right now. The excuses are lower and lower and lower for you to produce great work. So what is the excuse not doing so? That is, I think, how I got it. And that's how I interpret the era. And that's how artists are interpreting the era. Rafiq, who did the AI art for MoMA, yeah, it's AI art, but it's so unique that people are like, how in the hell he did that?
So what's that artist's name? That Rafiq who?
Rafiq Anadol.
Unadult. How's his last name
Anadol. Andaol. I think. Rafiq Anadol. If you search MoMA AI art acquisition, yeah, he's a great one to do.
I think the other things, and we touched on it before, was basically giving technology a human interface is where technology goes from not used to used.
Yes.
And another example of that is where the browser showed up in the 90s.
100%.
Internet was this ugly user interface. In fact, it didn't have one. The browser gave it, again, a user interface, a face that was easily usable. ChatGPT gave AI a face. And anyone can use it. I think democratizing any technology is where it gets really, really exciting and explodes, as we've seen. 100 million in 6 weeks it took for ChatGPT to reach 100 million subscribers or users. The other thing that's quite fascinating is, and I think just thinking about fashion and as an art form, which I never did until I met my partner, and she's just loves it, spends a lot of time dressing up for work. And she's a corporate lawyer, right? So she's very eclectic, a very different dressing corporate lawyer. And I'm just thinking about fashion, for example. Now you've got tools to help you create a great looking shoe in digital. The thing I think is going to happen possibly is the different intersection of other technologies where it becomes really, really magic. So let's add a great design idea to AI enhanced, amplified creativity for a sneaker. Then you plug in a 3D printer and it produces the shoe, right? So from idea delivered to a shoe enabled by technology, but starts with a human idea. And that, for me, starts to get really exciting. So I've been interested in your thoughts, too, about some of the issues we're going through with art and is copyright. And a lot of the scraping of the web has scraped artists' work. What's your thoughts on copyright and art?
I definitely support the art. I think let's go back a step back to the original problem. The original problem is the economic system that we live in, capitalism. In capitalism, you work or you get paid for your work. You live. You don't. You kind of starve and you become homeless and stuff. And that's the biggest problem. If people had the means to live with integrity and happiness, and at least they don't find themselves homeless or hopeless without making money, then I would welcome what AI is doing. But the problem is artists make money from their art, and when you take what they make, in addition to other ethical things, but let's say the core fundamental element, when you take somebody's livelihood, it's a big problem. Whereas if we live in a community where, that's why people, Sam Altman and other, let's say, leaders in the space recommended UBI, Universal Basic Income, because a lot of people will be left without jobs. And that's just how every revolution brings that. Every information revolution did that. Every revolution leaves victims behind, let's say.
Yes.
And if we don't take care of them, this time it's going to be massive. And we saw the strikes in Hollywood. Like, these people are not going to accept, people that we know are not going to accept you taking away their livelihood. They're going to fight back. So I think the first thing is taking care of the economic condition. Once that is taken care of, you cannot use artist work without crediting the artist.
Mm.
Remove copyright is more like a legal issue, but you have to credit the artist and you have to reward the artist for their work. That's period. You cannot just take without giving. That's unacceptable, especially if you're making money. A lot of people publicize artist work and make it available. But if the artist lives from that and you took it away and you're now doing it and you're making money and they're not making money, that doesn't make any sense. So I completely support the artist demand to protect their copyrights, to protect their livelihood, and to protect what they created and their ability to make money and to get credit for it. So I think where we want to go, or where we're going to go, and AI going to have to do that, is that they have to show this artwork, here's where it came from, here's what it's inspired by, and here are the names of artists that are credited by that. And I think they have to devise a way to reward the artist and keep their claim and keep their credit. Because we're seeing everything being used by the artist. We dabbled in AI art. I created like 8,000 pieces. I created them with artist work. So actually I worked with artists that we commission and we work with and we pay, and we use their work with their permission to play around with AI and see what it can do. So it's fascinating. There's a lot you can do. And they themselves, they loved it. So we have some collaboration with established artists where we created artwork that does that. And I think that is the right way. And I think also openness and transparency is the right way forward. And that's my take on the topic, is that you need to respect the work of not just the artist, of the work of people, acknowledge them, reward them, so that collaborate and make money with them. And I think that's where they failed. Most of the companies, where they used what they have, and they knew they can get away with it, and that's what they did. So that I think, unless they fix this, it's going to remain a stain in the AI space.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just the AI space it's worrying. For example, let's use Google as an example. Google, collects all the information in the world and presents it in an easy way that it's got, it's easy to use, easy to find. You can put in just one or two keywords, and quite often you can find something amongst trillions of data points. But what's really fascinating watching Google, essentially it's scraping all the content of the web and presenting it in a user interface called the browser. They've moved on now to actually putting snippets at the top about answers to questions. And you don't even need to visit the creator's site, whether it's a news site, whether it's a blog, or whether it's an image site. So essentially, Google is slowly, basically stopping people reaching the artist site, and they're making the money. And it's really interesting. In Australia, we actually had the news sites. The big news sites in Australia are paid by Facebook and Google.
I saw that, which is excellent.
Okay. There's a small problem because the rest of us, bloggers, don't have a voice. Because who pays us for our information that's scraped by Google.
Exactly.
And essentially Google's creating an interface where they present the information as snippets and so on, that you don't even need to go to the website, which is where quite often the creators make their money. When you visit the website, buy something, subscribe to something. So it's not only AI as an issue. This is why I think the business model, the economic model of the digital age, we're going to take a big, close look at this, and it's going to be painful, but it's got to be fixed in some way to reward the artists and creators.
100%. And these are companies that are not, starving. These are companies. What Google made $70 billion last year, so they can afford to make 50 billion instead of 70 billion. And that's what I mean. Like the economic model of growth at any cost is costing us, because a lot of people are left in the dust and they're doing the work. It's not that Google would not exist without information to organize. It's organizing, but it needs the information to organize. AI cannot exist without the information to consume and those databases. And I think that will remain. And that's one of the reasons why we recommend to people that, and we talk that there will be different kinds of internet that will be created. So conversational internet is one. So you need to be prepared for that. And people, for example, like you, who have all their content created. Now OpenAI created something called GPTs and assistants, where you can actually take all of your content, feed it into the assistant, and let's say have a GPT or chat GPT that speaks in your language, so people and your voice and your tone of voice, so people can speak to it and it can speak back for them from the information you created, and you can get paid for it. So I thought that was a good move, because they're recognizing that it's important for the community it's the community that can make them win. It's not, they can only do so much on their own. So that was a major advancement. So continuing to do the work and continuing to focus on an area of passion that you can stand out, that very few can stand out, like you know, noticing something, because all of us will look at the same thing and will notice different things. So you looked at, let's say, the bag. I mean, I was like, oh, that's interesting, and he said, like, no, that's an interesting story, and you wrote about it, and therefore you stand out as someone who, you know, acted on the observation. So there will be the conversational web. There will also be the visual web, which is something that we're building, where you can consume the web, and instead of making it a more optimized website, you consume it visually. So for example, you have your blog. It can be where, imagine, instead of me sitting on a computer and reading that blog, I can play it on the TV. So it can play the images or AI images generated representing the blog, and it can read the blog for me. That is what we're building for art and culture, which is the visual web. And then there is the functional web, where you use it, and that's going to be hidden behind either the visual web or the conversational web, where it's where things get done, like your software that does CRM and stuff like that. But you talk to ChatGPT and say, okay, organize or send an email to my database telling them that I have a podcast, you know, with Hussein in 2 hours. And it will write the email, send it, and say, hey, send it, and you send it. Just like Siri right now, you can say, send a message to my son or something like that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And you talked about content, and it has crossed my mind, is to create a Jeff Bullis avatar with my voice and my image. And you could ask me anything, and it'll basically go in seconds, go through my entire body of work, which is, we're up to 14 years of work. We've got about 3,000 articles plus. We've got 200 podcast episodes. We've got YouTube channel. So, and part of me really just wants to annoy my children and descendants, because as long as I keep paying for the hosting and I get the avatar and the AI working for me, you'll be able to ask Jeff everything for another 2 or 3 centuries, long as the lights are still on. I don't know if it's a good idea. It's maybe an ego trip, but I think it would just be fun to do, because we can, right? Let's have fun. Yeah. And you just talked about something that I found fascinating, I hadn't heard before, the conversational web. I love the writing, and I can read fast. So watching a video that takes me 30 minutes, I can read it in 3. Okay, so, but the conversation web's interesting. And then people love videos. Short videos are now dominating the planet on social media. TikTokers, you know, rule supreme now. The Instagram Reels copied that. We've got YouTube Shorts, right? Short video. And just a fascinating, by the way, a bit of research shows that human attention's shorter than a goldfish now. Human attention has been measured at 7 seconds. Goldfish have got 9 seconds. So there you go.
We hit the pinnacle of our evolution. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the web is gonna evolve, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, like, one of the things I can't live without is my computer. I love my computer. I sit on it. It's my window to the world. And recently, like, if I don't know if you ever tried to open a browser on a TV or smart TV, it's horrendous.
It's shit.
So yeah, so the browser, this is the experience that we got so far, and it only can take us so much. I think right now with the conversational web, if you looked at the app of ChatGPT, is incredible. You can, like, it can see. It's not that you can talk to it can see as well. You can open the camera and say, here's how what I have on my desk, give me a better way to organize it. That's literally what you can tell it, and will tell you that. There's nothing on the internet that can give you that at all. So you kind of have a trusted advisor. So imagine, for example, let's say an interior decorator. You know, I moved into my home, instead of paying a couple of $1,000s or more, sometimes I'm sure it's more, for interior decorator to tell me where to put stuff, I can just open ChatGPT and say, here's where my stuff are. Give me a great way of organizing them. And here I am. It can give me optimized, especially personalized for me, which is incredible. You can't get that. You can obviously go to the internet and say ideas for organizing rooms, and you'll see the best designed rooms, but it's not your home. Yeah. Whereas here suddenly, so that is a leap unlike anything before. Ultimate personalization at very low cost. This will kill so many businesses. So you have to adapt rapidly to the conversational web. Not only that, you have to think of how can I be not a mediocre interior designer or a regular interior designer who can get work and can survive and maybe do very well. But when this comes in and people have it in their hands, which OpenAI is working on that, they hired Johnny Ive, which used to be the designer for Apple, because they know once they own the device, they own your life. You know, we live everything on the iPhone, a device we can't live with. So imagine if you have a device that you can talk to, you don't even have to open. Just say, tell me this or do this, or, you know, today I'm not going, postpone all the meetings. That's it. As simple as that. 5 minutes and you're back to sleep. And it does everything. It sends the emails, it finds out who you encounter, and it can do that now. It's not something far-fetched. It can write code. You can build, if you look at I highly recommend, check out, it might be a little bit technical in certain areas, OpenAI Dev Day. And what they did is literally on the phone, on screen, they created a web page that corresponds to the users and write codes in real time to correspond to a user request. You don't even have to do anything. So that will change. Web design will be obsolete. UX design will be obsolete. Like it's a scary world that's getting and exciting, but it's also scary because we don't know what it's going to look like. And while people are kind of voicing and thinking that Skynet is going to come in and kill us all, the biggest fear is the transition right now in the next 10 years. Millions, if not hundreds of millions of people will be struggling to find their place in the world. And that's why we believe that with art and culture, with going back to what makes us human, which is how we learn, how we engage, the kind of conversations we have, is the future.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I've been a little bit obsessed in writing about what does creativity mean in a world of AI. And I think that a lot of people struggle with, they look at the super geniuses, the Einsteins, the Picassos, and they're going, I can't be creative because I'm not like them. The reality is, I think what makes us different as humans is we are creative. And I think within all of us sits various degrees of creativity and ability, creative ability. But I think for most people is not only do they need to create, they need to get that creation out, produced. And you're doing a great job doing that for the artists, which is fabulous. And also you're adding your own superpowers, marketing to that as well. So I really very much believe that AI is amplifying our creativity. We created AI. We created ChatGPT. Now it's just got to work out how as humans we control it so it doesn't get out of the box and start to eat us like social media is starting to do, creating hate and disinformation. We've got to get ahead of the game on AI. I believe it's a force for good, but like any technology, it can be a force for evil. Dynamite is a perfect example, invented by Nobel. It basically helped create, industrial mining, but also created industrial killing. Yes. And these are the challenges and the paradox of any technology. And as humans, we've got to get ahead of the game. So I'm finding it fascinating. The other thing I love, Seth Godin again. I've just with maybe Seth Godin fanboys a little bit. I've read almost all his books, but
me too.
One of his books I really enjoy is The Practice. The other one,
wonderful book.
And on top of that, add the book by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. It is just fantastic about resistance.
I haven't read that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a note down.
Yeah.
The War of Art?
Yeah.
Nice.
just fabulous. It's about what strikes all creators and all humans is resistance. In other words, not sitting down every day and getting into the ritual of just putting pen to paper, paintbrush to, the canvas. We need to make, so genius is actually in the doing. That's what I think people have got to realize. And once you do that and you think about it, and I love the quote by Bill Gates. He said, most people underestimate what they can do in 1 year, overestimate what they can do in 1 year. Sorry, I'll go start again. Bill Gates said, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And just think about this, whether you're an artist in any shape or form, if you do something every day, 10 years later, there are 9,000 things you have done.
It's like writing. A lot of people want to be at that level of the writer who wrote the best-selling book, or the is now, let's say,
J.K.
have all these
Rowling.
followers.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that all of that started with the first article, which probably nobody knows or nobody liked or nobody even paid attention. But it's that tenacity to come back again and sit and write, and maybe write until you get, let's say, at number 100, and that shoots off. You never know. But unless you take those steps, you're never going to get there. I love what you said. There's a book by Rick Rubin called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And it's really exactly about what you said, which is, he said, the job of an artist is to create, is to put out, is to produce. It's not your job. Once you produce, that's it. The rest is up to the world. Your job is done.
Yeah.
So it's really about, create, do, as you said, like produce, do the action. That is your way. Unless you execute, nothing exists, right?
Yeah. As I started about creativity, I actually discovered the meaning, the word creare, however it's pronounced, which might be Latin. It's two core words within that: art, idea, and produce.
Wow.
So they are the two key words that we as artists, and that I'm talking to everyone, because everyone here listening, watching, you are all artists. But what you've got to do is actually step into that every day, choose the passion area you want to do, and create. Doesn't mean you're going to be a Picasso, but just do the practice, as Seth Godin says, get into the routine and ritual, find a place where you can do it. And I think having a space to do it is important. And obviously you've got a space that sits behind you and in front of you, where it's your space to create whatever you want to do. And I think, and routine might sound boring, but you can't wait for inspiration to strike. You've actually got to sit down and write one word, and then write two words as a writer. And then it's going to look messy and horrible. But as the hours pass, you are word wrangling into your art to make sense of the noise. And that's, for me, brings me so much joy.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This is awesome.
So I'm going to ask you two questions now to wrap it up, because I'm mindful of your time, and in Vancouver, time moves slowly or fast. I'm not quite sure. So two things, and one is, what if you had all the money in the world? What would you do every day? You didn't have to worry about money at all, ever again. Number two, what are some of the biggest challenges, or the biggest challenge that's taught you the most? I'd be interested in your thoughts. I think I know the answer to one or two of these questions. So what brings you incredible deep joy that if you had enough money, you will just do it every day, even if it costs you money?
Absolutely. I'm tempted to say that I would do exactly what I'm doing right now, but probably what I would do more of is take a little bit more time to read and have a place where I can go crazy, like paint and stuff. Like I would probably get just a place where I can paint and do stuff. But I love what I'm doing, and I'm definitely in a place of my life that I'm extremely thankful. I never thought I would be here, that I'm living in a great space that allows me the space to have at least my office. Throughout my life, when I was young, I had lived. My office was like the place I studied was my parents' bedroom. So whenever they're out, that's the only time I can get my own and listen to music and stuff. So our home was very small, so came to appreciate having your own space. So I would love to have an atelier, let's say, an art and a workshop where I can go crazy and I buy a ton of technology stuff and the testing stuff. So that's also something I would do probably if I had all the time and money in the world. But yeah, I will be doing exactly what I'm doing right now because I wholeheartedly believe in this mission and vision that I wanna execute and deliver on. And in regards to the second question, what was it again?
Second question is, a lot in Western culture, we see failure as terrible. I think we should see failure as an opportunity to learn. So what are some of the biggest challenges and failures, or a failure that's taught you the most?
Yeah. The biggest failure probably was with CreativeArab. So launch CreativeArab, we got it was big failure because it was actually a massive success. So we launched CreativeArab in 2006, the largest marketplace for Middle Eastern art in the world. 1,200 artists, 3 years of work to get there. I was on the inside cover of Forbes, not the Forbes, and I was featured in BBC. I was in every publication almost, and I was hailed as a person who's going to change the face of art in the Arab world. So massive media success, but we made zero money.
Right.
And the reason is first of all, we were very, very early. Who wants to buy online art or art online in 2006? It's so early. Facebook has not gone international. WordPress has not been invented yet, or at least invented to the world. So it costed me $30,000 to put together a website that today you can put together in $38. That's how expensive it was. It was insanely expensive. And we couldn't figure out how to capture payment from people. For example, just to talk to the bank to establish online payment, $25,000 just to talk to them about online payment. It was extremely hard. I made every mistake in the book, and some that were not written in the book probably that I should write about, and all because I had great success at the very beginning. My first tech company was acqui-hired. I was like sailing. I was like, I know business, and I knew nothing. So that was when I actually realized the importance of constant learning. So the biggest learning that came out of that is I'm never going to say I know. I still do in some areas, but then I humbly remind myself that I know shit about anything. I should look forward. I should listen. I should, read about it, and always approach something with the mind of a learner rather than a mind that I know how to do this. So yeah, the biggest failure gave me this life that I have, but definitely I wish I never had it. It's that paradox, you need to have that failure to be the person. These failures shape you just like successes, but also they're painful.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. And the reality is that it's great to have people share their failures and what they learn out of it. We need to see as learning, not as failures. And it also has made you who you are today, which is where I think you're on purpose from my observation. You're in the middle of your ikigai, which is the intersection of what you love doing, what you're good at, what your expertise is, what your experience is, what the world wants, and what the world will pay you for. That's the basically core of ikigai, and you've got that intersection happening from my observation, and it's just so good to see. And I think the other thing that I really love what you're doing is that you are providing a portal and platform for artists to do what they love and get paid for it, so they can create more art and share their beauty with the world. And thank you for doing that for the world, and I look forward to seeing this unfold.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, Jeff. Like as I've told you, you've been someone who's I know in my life, and even though we never kind of met, but I've been following you. That caricature of yours is very iconic, and I remember reading a lot of your articles. So it's also surreal to kind of be in a place in my life that I get to talk to you. So thank you very much for having me, and thank you for very thoughtful questions, very thoughtful and deep conversation. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Hussein. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll do a follow-up on this down the track and see how it's all going, because AI is evolving rapidly. It's going to have it's got implications for all of humanity in so many areas. And I think, you sound positive about it. I'm very positive about it. There's others preaching utopia, there's others preaching dystopia. Of course, with anything, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, according to the philosophy of the Tao. So thank you very much for sharing your insights and experiences. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you.